Yes, there is lots of fun new stuff happening in the JavaScript world, Node being a very big one of them. However, on the ColdFusion side, we also have CommandBox, and CommandBox fundamentally serves the same purpose for the CFML space that Node serves for the JavaScript space. So we do have a lot of the same fun toys in ColdFusion land that the JavaScript folks have.
Welcome back to the show. I'm here with Nolan Erck from south of Shasta, and we're going to be talking about ColdFusion CommandBox versus Node.js and all the cool development things you can do with each. And we're doing a developer feature shootout today to see which one is the better one to use for your development process. So if you have not met Nolan, he has been developing software for more than 20 years. And he started off in the video game industry, but quickly came into web development. And he now runs the SAC Interactive user group in Sacramento. And he teaches classes on all kinds of software development, cool stuff. And he is a prolific presenter. I last saw him at Into the Box in Texas, but I think you're going to CF Summit in Las Vegas, aren't you, as well?
Yes, I am.
Excelente. Well, welcome back to the show. So maybe we should just start off with breaking some myths, because we want people to be crying at home because their myths are broken. No, you don't have to cry, but we do want to dispel a few myths. So I think one of the myths out there is that JavaScript has all cool tools like Node.js.
Right.
And that ColdFusion is dying and has no tools and is naked in the wilderness.
Yes, that's a pretty common rumor that is out there.
Is it true?
No, it's not true. Yes, there is lots of fun new stuff happening in the JavaScript world, Node being a very big one of them. However, on the ColdFusion side, we also have CommandBox, and CommandBox fundamentally serves the same purpose for the CFML space that Node serves for the JavaScript space. So we do have a lot of the same fun toys in ColdFusion land that the JavaScript folks have.
Well, I think we should compare Node.js to CommandBox and see how they do. Are you up for that?
Yes.
But before we get into the details of the shootout and compare feature to feature and see which one is better, maybe we should just back up a minute and answer what the heck is Node.js, just in case anyone listening hasn't really played with it.
Sure. So Node is an app you install either on your laptop where you write your code or on a web server like you would install ColdFusion or IIS. The idea with Node is you can have JavaScript that can run anywhere, not just inside a web browser like it traditionally does, but you can have JavaScript run on your dev laptop as a command line tool to script different pieces of functionality together. You can write custom commands purely in JavaScript with Node. You can also power a web server with Node.js. So instead of something like ColdFusion or PHP, you could have Node.js be your server-side tool, just like you would have ColdFusion do it. So it gives you lots of different new avenues in which you can run JavaScript.
So it's a combination. It's both a web server, in effect, but running in JavaScript. And also it has a zillion development tools that we're going to talk about in a little bit.
That's correct.
And it's very popular.
Extremely popular. It came out several years ago, and it's just gone off like gangbusters and really taken the JavaScript world and accelerated the ways in which you can develop things based on JavaScript. So it's done quite a bit of good for that community.
Excellent. So maybe we should also answer what is CommandBox, because not everyone may have used CommandBox.
That is an excellent question. CommandBox does the exact same thing, but for ColdFusion developers. So traditionally, ColdFusion is a server-side tool you install on your web server, and that's it. You can technically install it on your dev laptop as well, but that's just running a local web server for like development purposes. ColdFusion has not been a tool you can build command line applications with. It has not been a tool you can use in really any situation other than powering a web server. And now that we have CommandBox, That's all changed. CommandBox now is an app you install on your laptop, just like you would install Node on your laptop. Or you can install CommandBox on your server, just like you can install Node up there. And it gives you ColdFusion from the command line. So you have your server-side CFML, just like you did previously, whether you're running ColdFusion 2016 or 18 or Lucy 5 or whatever, that all still stays the same, and you can turn that on and off with CommandBox. You also get the ability to write native command line tools on your laptop purely in ColdFusion. So traditionally, if you wanted to write a command line tool, you'd have to use some sort of shell scripting like Bash or some sort of compiled language like C++ to get command line tooling. And now with CommandBox, you can do all of that writing nothing but CFML.
Wow. So no more wacky script languages to learn. You can do it all in CFML or all in JavaScript, which
That's correct.
Many developers know both those languages. So.
Right.
Now, it's all very well, these things sound really cool and powerful, but what about installing them? Maybe that should be the first comparison in the shootout. Are they hard to install or?
No, they're both pretty easy. For Node, you just go to nodejs.org, and they usually have a couple of great big green buttons on the front page showing you like the latest version that most users have, sort of the long-term stable support version of Node. And then they'll also have a button for the most recent bleeding edge version with all the latest features that maybe isn't quite tested as thoroughly yet. But installing either of those is pretty easy. You click the green button for the version of your choice, and it usually just works. There are regular updates available for Node.js pretty often on their website. You download, so you just click the green button, download the installer. It takes a few seconds, and that's usually all you have to do. And then on the CommandBox side, it's the same thing. So CommandBox is made by Ortus Solutions, the folks that give us ColdBox and TestBox and a dozen or two other great ColdFusion products. You just go to the ortussolutions.com website, go to the CommandBox page, and they've also got a set of green buttons where you can just pick the version of CommandBox that's right for you. There's one for Windows, one for Mac. There's a couple of different options for Linux machines. CommandBox requires the Java runtime before CommandBox will run. Some people get a little scared off when they hear that. They think, oh, I have to download Java first and configure it a certain way and do something more complex with it. That's not the case. In addition to those bright green buttons for installing CommandBox, there's a set of buttons right next to it that will give you CommandBox and the correct version of the Java runtime that you would need for your platform. So you simply just click that button, and CommandBox will install both itself and the Java runtime that you need in one step. And that also usually just works. You click it, run it, and it's done.
And just to be clear, you don't have to understand that. You just need to say, I'm using this version of Windows or Linux or Mac.
Yeah, pretty much.
If
you're not sure if you have the Java runtime or not already installed, just download the one with the runtime and play it safe. You'll be fine.
Excellent. Sounds very easy. Now, I think we should just ask what the costs of each of these things are, because that might be concerning people.
Sure. So these are both free open source products. There is no cost to install Node. There is no cost to install CommandBox. There is no limit to the number of things you can use it for the number of web apps or command line tools you can use it to run or build or anything else. You download the app and it is completely free. And that's true for Node and that's true for CommandBox.
All right. Well, what's the score between CommandBox and Node?
It sounds like installation-wise, it's both kind of one-to-one. They're both pretty easy to download and install.
All right.
I think they're about the same.
Okay. Shootout is a 1-1 draw at the moment, but let's go on to look at the command line, because that's one of the common ways people use it.
Yes.
Run JavaScript or ColdFusion straight from the command line, batch files.
Yep.
How does that compare?
So for those are also pretty much the same. On the Node side, if I want to run JavaScript from the command line, I simply type the word Node and hit enter, and that will give me a prompt in my DOS window or terminal window, whatever platform I'm on, and I can just start typing JavaScript just like it were in a browser. So I could do console.log and print statements out to the screen. I can create variables and if statements and for loops, whatever the typical JavaScript syntax is that I'm familiar with or that I want to use. That all works in Node. Just I don't have to do anything. I type Node, hit enter, start typing my JavaScript, and that's it. And on
Now, I notice when I've done that, I type hello world or whatever, to the console using JavaScript command, but it says undefined.
So it probably
Did I
says two
make a
things. You probably get
mistake?
the hello, and then you get the undefined after it. Is maybe that was.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's not a bug. That's how Node is defined to work. What you're seeing are the results of two things. You're seeing the output of your code, which is the hello world statement that you got, that you typed in your console log statement. And what you're also seeing is the return value of that line of code. So the way Node works is it'll output your results, and it will output if that line of code returns something, like in JavaScript, if I said return 10 plus 10, the output would be 20. Since console.log doesn't return anything, it just returns void, you get that undefined statement in addition to the value you were expecting, like the hello world on the screen.
Okay. So I didn't make an error. It is working okay.
Yeah, it's not a bug in your code. That's just a side effect of how Node processes JavaScript when you're typing it sort of inline of the prompt right there.
All right. Now, what about CommandBox? Can you do the same thing? You can just write ColdFusion.
You can do the same thing.
CFScript commands.
Yeah. So in the CommandBox space, there's a command called REPL, and I always forget what the exact abbreviation is for that. But basically, REPL lets you run and evaluate ColdFusion commands right there at the command line. You're in CommandBox, you simply type REPL, and that gives you a prompt. And you can type any ColdFusion CFML script commands you're used to, right? Output, make a variable, run a for loop, create a function, whatever the things are you want to do, that will all work from the command line in CommandBox, just like JavaScript runs from the command line in Node.
Well, I think REPL must mean read, evaluate, and then the P is
that's where I forget it.
Print, probably print.
Print loop. Yeah, thank you. I keep wanting to say it's parse, but I think that's just a side effect. I keep wanting to say it's parse, but I'm like, no, it's not parse. That's just a side effect.
Print to the screen is what it means. But I think the L means loop.
Right, you're right.
Because you can.
I think I spent too much time writing parsers in my video game days, and the P in my head just suddenly parse, even though that's wrong.
Right. But the upshot is you can put either JavaScript or ColdFusion script into either of them.
Yes.
And it'll execute it. Can you run whole little programs? Is that the idea?
You can run entire little programs as well, yeah. So if I have like a .js file and it's got a bunch of JavaScript in it that I want to run at the command line, instead of typing Node and hitting enter and then typing my JavaScript manually into the terminal, I can type Node space myfile.js, and whatever JavaScript is inside that file, Node will load it up and process it, and you'll get the output right there on the screen in your terminal.
All right. Now, I noticed CommandBox is a lot more colorful, and I think Brad Wood, who wrote this, must have ASCII art embedded in his DNA.
Yes, he does add the colorful bits of UI to the CommandBox screen. There's actually even, you can get even more colorful bits of output in CommandBox by installing an add-on pack for it called BulletTrain. And that gives you not just more colors, which it does, but it also gives you a more informative prompt when you're in your terminal window. By default, say you're in DOS or terminal on a Mac, usually the prompt shows you the name of the folder you're in, and that's about it. You can install BulletTrain in CommandBox, and it will actually give you the name of the folder you're in, as well as the time it took to execute the previous statement in CommandBox. It will give you the status of the project folder where you're at. So if you're in a project that's connected to a Git repo, the BulletTrain prompt will show you like the status of that if you have files that have not been checked in and that sort of thing. Gives you several bits of useful info if you spend a lot of time at the command line in CommandBox. Installing that BulletTrain thing can give you extra colors and lots of extra nice functionality too. And BulletTrain is also a free open source extension for CommandBox, no cost to anyone.
All right, so what's the score on the command line features then?
I'd say we're still tied at like 2-2.
All right. Well, the pressure is building up here. So let's look at running files. You want to run some batch files you've written in JavaScript or ColdFusion?
Yeah, so like we mentioned a minute ago, just on the Node side, just Node space filename.js, and it will run your JavaScript files right there on the command line. You don't have to be in a web browser. You don't have to be on a web server. Just open your terminal, node space, filename.js, boom, you're done. And on the CommandBox side, the same thing. When you're in CommandBox, you simply type execute space some file.cfm, and it will run your ColdFusion file straight from the command line, just like Node does the JavaScript files.
Well, that sounds easy. So I guess the score is 3-all.
I would say 3-3. Yeah, they both do the exact same thing. It takes the same amount of typing. There's no difference in the workflow. They both solve that same problem. I want to run code of this nature on the command line, and I can do it with one simple command statement.
And what are some common examples of code you might want to run from either of these things?
You might have, so the nice thing about running both of these on the laptop itself or on the server is you can do things outside of what the browser can do. So if I had files that I wanted to read off of the hard drive and parse them to, create some sort of new output, or just manage scripting style things on my laptop. So copying files from one directory to another, if I'm not comfortable with bash script commands, if I'm not comfortable with setting permissions in that environment, if I just don't like shell scripting, if I don't know how to do bash scripting, that sort of thing, I'm more comfortable with the JavaScript style syntax or with the CFML syntax. I can write code to do things like that, loop over all of the folders, all of the files in this directory, count how many of them are, images, or copy all of the JPEGs from one folder into another folder. The nice thing about being able to do that from the command line is I know there's been a lot of ColdFusion work done in the past where people have written giant, maybe scheduled tasks in ColdFusion code to do things like nightly processing of files. So maybe I have raw camera photos uploaded in JPEG format up to a cloud server somewhere by the truckload. We have hundreds and hundreds of new files uploaded, and they all need to be run through the CFImage tag to be downsized into a certain resolution or whatever. I can do that with a scheduled task in ColdFusion, but I can also do that now from the command line if I want to test that code straight out in a terminal window. You can do all that from the command line now, so you can do all that from CommandBox, and just different like scripting abilities like that are usually what I see people using CommandBox for from the command line.
Well, they both sound good, so it sounds like they're equal score on running files, so it's 3-3 right now. But what about if you want to learn these things? Do they have built-in help, and is it any good?
Yeah, so they both have, sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you there. They both have documentation on their websites that tell you how to use both of them, and they both have help commands baked in. So in the Node side, if I just type node -- help, I get the default documentation outputted to the screen that will show me various bits of sort of the default stuff that it does. Here's different command line options you can use to turn features on and off in Node. Here's different flags for setting, turning different syntax options on and off, things of that nature. And then on the CommandBox side, same thing. You just type box space help. You don't need the -- part on the CommandBox side, just box help. And it will spit out the default information about which commands are available for you in CommandBox. Now, the output you get on the Node help is a little bit different than the output you get in the CommandBox side, but that just has to do with how the commands inside Node are collected versus how the commands inside CommandBox are collected. CommandBox has what they call namespaces. So you might have a command like server. If you type box server, by itself, that doesn't do anything. But box server help will show you all of the stuff inside that server namespace you can do. So things like server start, server stop to turn your ColdFusion servers on and off. Server list to list all of the ColdFusion servers on the given machine, things like that. But yeah, they both have pretty good baked in default help. You type node -- help or you type box help, and they both spit out pretty decent information to get you started and show you what options are available to you out of the gate.
All right. So I think the score here is 4-all, still neck and neck. Let's see if we can break the tie here by looking at how each of these tools work.
Okay. So the way Node works is on your machine, it's running a JavaScript application engine right there on your laptop or on your server, wherever you installed it. And the code that you write, your JavaScript files or whatever, are processed through that engine. Node will spin up different services internally as it needs them. And then it runs your code and outputs the results or does whatever the contents of your JS files tell it to do. You can customize Node per project on your laptop by way of, they have config JSON files that control what Node does, which files it wants to look at, which options you're going to turn on and off, and that sort of thing. So pretty straightforward. You type your commands. Node turns on the different internal app server and services that it needs. It looks at your config JSON files to tweak it as necessary, and it does its job. And it all works pretty seamlessly. If you don't have the config JSON files with lots of different things tweaked in it, there are lots of defaults baked into Node to where it will just work in most cases for you, just right from the get-go. And on the CommandBox side, it's the same thing. You type box to start CommandBox up, and that will run a ColdFusion app server right there on your laptop or on your server. If you have your execute some file.cfm, all of that CFM code is processed through that app server that's running on your laptop. CommandBox will spin up different services as it needs them. They're called modules. You might have other installed packages in your CommandBox setup. It'll just turn those on and off and use them as it needs to. And just like on the Node side, CommandBox also has some customizable .json config files to tweak how ColdFusion is run on your machine. So if you want to give it more memory in the JVM, if you want to use a particular port on your machine, or pretty much whatever setting you would normally go into the ColdFusion admin screen for and turn on and off with a checkbox, you can tweak all of that stuff through the CommandBox config JSON files, just like you would through a UI. So they both work the exact same way. It spins up an engine, processes your code, turns on different modules as it needs to, and you've got config JSON files available to tweak both Node and CommandBox to set it up however you need.
Well, I think they score equally on this feature too.
Yep,
so
they're both the same. 5 to 5?
Yeah, 5 to 5. So let's look at setting up a new project in Node and CommandBox.
Okay. So on the Node side, you open a terminal window or a DOS prompt window, whatever OS you're on, and you type npm init. And that just initializes the folder. So what that will do is that tells Node, npm stands for Node Package Manager. It's sort of a very commonly used add-on pack with Node. It comes with the Node stuff when you install it. So you type npm init in an empty folder, and that tells Node, oh, I'm going to make a new JavaScript project in this folder that we're in now. Node will ask you a few questions. What's the name of this project? Things of that nature. And basically, it will create a package.json file in that folder with the name of your project, the version number, a description of what your project does, a few other bits of info, like maybe the author of your project, and if you're using a particular license, like an open source license of some sort. Basically, any of those questions that you get asked when you type npm init, you answer all of those, or whichever combination of them you want to answer. You can just hit enter if you want to skip one. Node will collect all that info, saves it to your package.json file, and that's all you need to start using Node as a project setup on your laptop. npm init, it spits out a JSON file with all the stuff in it, and you're ready to go. On the CommandBox side, instead of typing npm init like you do for Node, you type box init, and it does basically the exact same thing. You do box init in a terminal window. CommandBox will fire up and run, and it will ask you a handful of questions as well. Say, okay, what's the name of your project going to be? Who's the author? What version number are you using? Pretty much the same type of questions Node will ask you on the Node side. And again, if you don't know the answer to something or you don't care, you can just hit your enter key and skip pretty much anything in that list. Most of it's optional stuff you don't need to specify to get your project running. When the CommandBox box init command is done running, just like on the Node side, you get a package.json file spit out as the results with all of your info saved in it. In CommandBox, you get a box.json file saved with all of your information in it. And that's, again, all you need to do to start using CommandBox is you need a box.json file. So on the Node side, you need a package.json file. On the CommandBox side, you need a box.json file. They both have simple init commands you type to start running and spit that file out. No extra work needed on either side.
All right. Well, score is 6-all, I think.
6-6, sounds about right to me.
All right. I'm going to see if I can throw a spanner in this equal thing by asking how they deal with dependencies, if you've got frameworks or libraries you use in your production code.
Right. So dependencies, just for people that might not be familiar with that term, dependencies are chunks of code your app needs in order to run. So for instance, if I'm running ContentBox to build a CMS website, that relies on the ColdBox framework in order for it to run. If I'm running a Mira CMS website, that relies on Framework 1 in order for it to run. So to use the Mira example again, a dependency of Mira websites is the Framework 1 library. I have to have that code installed on the server before that app will run in production and do the things I need it to do. On the JavaScript side, some similar examples might be things like Angular. If I'm building an Angular website, I have to have the Angular JavaScript files available on my server for that app to run. Or if I'm doing like a jQuery app or Lodash, things like that, those have to be on the server for my code to function on the JavaScript side. So on Node, in that package.json file that we mentioned a minute ago, there's a section called Dependencies. And it's just a little chunk of text where you tell it, these are the JavaScript things my application needs in order to function. So you would list in there, I need jQuery version 3.1, I need Angular version 5, I need Lodash version whatever, things like that would go in your dependency section of the JSON file. And then when your Node project gets initialized, it starts when you build your app and get it ready to go, Node will look at that dependency section. It will then go out to what it calls the registry, which is a great big website out in the cloud, basically, where all of those JavaScript files live. And Node will grab those assets, your jQuery, your Angular, whatever, copy them down to your laptop, and it puts them all in a folder called Node modules. So it's just a nice separate space where all of your dependencies go in your project. So on the Node side, it's really nice because you don't have to manually go out to jQuery.com anymore, and you don't have to go out to Angular.io and grab the files. You don't have to go find the version of Lodash you need or whatever else you're running in your app. You simply put the names of those things and the URLs in your package.json file under dependencies, and Node does the rest for you. It's really easy.
Well, that sounds cool. How can a CommandBox match that? Or
so CommandBox has the same thing. It literally, in your box.json file, it also has a dependencies section where you would list the things that your CommandBox app needs to run. So this still might be things like jQuery and Angular because you can build ColdFusion apps that also use JavaScript, but it could also be your ColdFusion stuff. So again, you would put a link in your dependencies in CommandBox for not just jQuery and Lodash. You might also put links in there for things like I need Framework 1, I need DI1 or Wirebox or ColdBox, the different libraries that your code relies on in order to function. So again, instead of me going manually out to ordersolutions.com, looking for the Wirebox stuff, copying it down, going again to ordersolutions.com, looking for the ColdBox stuff, copying it down, doing the same thing for Framework 1 and DI1 and so on, in my box.json file, there's a section called Dependencies. And I simply put the names of the items that I need in there. Instead of typing npm install like I do in the Node JavaScript space, I type box install. And what that will do is it'll look in that dependencies section in my box.json file. It'll go out to the cloud, hit those URLs, grab the items that I need. And just like Node has the Node modules folder, in your box.json file, you have a section called install paths where you can just tell CommandBox when you copy ColdBox down, for instance, please put it in a folder called /ColdBox. When you copy framework 1 down, please put it in a folder called, FW1 or whatever you want to name that. And so they both work the exact same way. You have a box.json file or a package.json file. They both have a dependency section. You put the names of the things that you need in there, and when you type your install command, whichever engine you're on, Node or CommandBox, will go out to the cloud and grab the stuff that you need, and it drops it right on your machine.
Sounds really convenient.
It's super convenient. It really speeds up building open source apps. When you want to download an app that somebody else wrote and you want to run it. Several years ago, the READMEs for those apps used to include things like, okay, before this will work, you have to go out to this website and grab Cold Spring, and then you have to grab this library over here and this library over there and configure them this way. And that was kind of annoying, especially when you just want to get an open source app up and running quickly. And now the author of those open source apps can simply include a box.json file, and all you as a developer have to do is type box install and wait a few seconds. It's done.
Wow. That's a total productivity win, whichever way you go. So
yeah.
I guess the score is 7-all. What you said.
7-all sounds about right to me.
And I'm sort of beginning to wonder if the developers of Node and the developers of CommandBox are really one and the same person, because they all have the same features.
I don't think they're one and the same person, because I don't think Brad would be able to sleep if he was writing both the Node stuff and the CommandBox stuff. And he's already a pretty busy dude as it is.
He is very productive and busy, yes. I think he has a clone of himself running on a Raspberry Pi somewhere at Autis headquarters.
That very well could be the case.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to dev dependencies,
Okay.
tools you have.
Yeah, so dependencies, like we mentioned, those are the things your app needs in order for it to run. So those would be files that have to go on the production web server for the code to function. So like Angular, if I'm building an Angular app, you have to have the Angular support files up there for the code to function, otherwise it won't do anything. And if I'm building a ContentBox app, I have to have ColdBox available on the server as well, otherwise my ContentBox site won't do anything. Same with like a Framework 1 site or a site using whatever other library you have out there. So dev dependencies are a little bit different. Those are tools that your developers need to have on their dev laptops while they're writing code and getting things ready, but that's not code that you necessarily want pushed out to your production web server. So this would be things like testing frameworks. So Jasmine on the JavaScript side, on the ColdFusion side, things like TestBox. I want to be able to test all of my code as a developer on my laptop, but I don't necessarily want all of that test code getting thrown out to the production web server, cluttering things up, maybe opening a security hole if I've got a bunch of sensitive data in the tests, things like that. So what you want to do with dev dependencies is have them installed on the dev laptop, but not have them go out to the prod server. So in addition to your dependency section in those JSON files we talked about, you can also have a dev dependency section in both of them. And what that does is it lists out things that when I type npm install or when I type box install, it will grab the dependencies and put them in the Node modules folder, but it will also grab the dev dependencies when I do npm install --dev, it grabs the dev dependencies. So that way, if I'm on the production server, I can type npm install, and things like Angular and jQuery will be downloaded. However, things like my testing libraries will not be downloaded. So it gives you a separate spot to put those there for when I want to do npm install dev on a dev laptop versus just npm install on a production machine. And then on the CommandBox side,
it's exactly the same, right?
It's exactly the same. Yep, you have a box.json file. It's got a dependency section for your Framework 1 or your Wirebox or whatever. It's also got a dev dependency section for your test box, your build tools if you have something in there you want to have on the developer machine. That stuff can all be saved separate to your dev dependency section. And then same thing, if you do box install, it installs your production stuff. If you do box install -- save dev, it will grab your dev dependencies and set all those up as well. And again, it just puts them in. You've got an install paths folder section for your dev dependencies, just like you do for the production ones. So I can tell it, please install TestBox in a folder called whatever you want TestBox to go into. It works exactly the same in Node and in CommandBox.
Wow. All right. Well, score is 8-all, I think.
Yep, 8-8.
Now, Yeah, so let's turn to package management. Just for people who don't understand, what is package management and why would you want it?
So package management it's that big space out in the cloud where on the node side, it's where you put your reusable JavaScript. So things like jQuery, that's not a JavaScript file specific to my website or your website. That's a generic reusable library that everyone can install and do something with. Same thing with, Lodash, Angular, Vue.js, React, whatever. Those are reusable tools to do different stuff in the JavaScript space. To make it easy for people to install all of that common reusable stuff, the JavaScript community has a cloud server out there called the Node Package Manager, or NPM. And that's the big space out in the cloud where the JavaScript community stores all of this stuff in a giant registry. So if I type npm install Lodash, for example, Node will go out to this registry, this npm website. It will find that Lodash library. It will download it to my machine and put it in my Node modules folder for that project. So it's just a nice generic collected space where you can put all of that commonly reused JavaScript stuff. On the ColdFusion side, we've never really had a similar thing. If people wanted an open source app, there've been a couple of kind of common sites over the years. There's like CFlib, where you can go grab a particular function. And we had the Reforge website up until recently that had a bunch of ColdFusion projects on there. The Ortus guys have several things on their website, of course, and there's like getmira.com if you want to grab the latest version of Mira. So there's different sites that are, I guess, fairly commonly known in the ColdFusion space, but there hasn't been like one contained thing we would actually call a registry, just like the JavaScript world would call the NPM registry theirs. Now in the CFML space, we have ForgeBox, which is the same as that NPM thing for the JavaScript world. ForgeBox is that for the CFML space. Sometimes people hear the word box in a product title, and they initially think, oh, that's only for ColdBox stuff. That is not true most of the time. ColdBox is a ColdBox product, and there are a couple of things that require ColdBox, but ForgeBox is just a website for ColdFusion stuff. You can put CF Wheels stuff up there, Mira, Framework 1. Any general CFML project you have can be tweaked to live on the ForgeBox website and be a thing folks can install. So if I built a blogging app, an app that lists my favorite flavors of coffee, anything at all that you come up with in CFML, you can set it up to where people can just type box install, the name of that project, and CommandBox will go out to the ForgeBox space, download it, and set it up on your machine. Just like if you're on the Node side and you type npm install Lodash or jQuery or whatever, you can type box install CF Wheels, box install Mira, box install a whole bunch of stuff that is not a ColdBox related product. And it all just works, just like it does on the Node side. So that's what the registry is. It's that big thing out in the cloud where you can dump pretty much anything for that particular technology.
That's great. I mean, I think that's a really way to speed up development and to share really cool open source code stuff with other folks. So great way to empower ColdFusion or whatever language you code in.
Yeah, it works really well. The nice thing about it too is folks often they'll have a blog where they put a link to a product that they make, and sometimes they get bored running a blog and they take the website down. And when that happens, so does the link to that open source app. Whereas if you put things out in ForgeBox, it's being maintained by people in the ColdFusion community. So you aren't as married to maintaining your blog to keep that product available for the world as you might have been, maybe 10, 15 years ago. Now you can just throw it on ForgeBox and it will be maintained by Ortus. So it's going to be there for quite some time.
Resistance is useless. The Borg will take over. Fortunately, they're very friendly.
They are extremely friendly.
And it is open source. We've got about 10 minutes left. So let's quickly look at Docker containerization. Do they both support that?
They do, yeah. So you can, on the Node side, there is an official Docker container. You can go to hub.docker.com, and there are Node Docker images up there if you like to use Docker for your dev setup or production setup. Yeah, super easy. Getting into the details of what Docker does would probably send us on a pretty big sideways tangent. So I'll just leave it at that and say, yes, there is a Docker node image available if you want to check that out. And on the CommandBox side, we have the same thing. You've got a node Docker, I'm sorry, not a node, a Docker container for CommandBox. Same thing, go to hub.docker.com, and Order Solutions has an official CommandBox Docker image sitting right there for you to download and play with.
All right, score is 10-all. Yep. This game is getting very nerve-wracking. We want to know if there's going to be a winner here. So I think we should go to a totally wacky category and ask, can you make games with these things? Because, of course, all developers love making games.
Right. Well, being a previous video game developer myself, I love making games. And yes, there are lots of resources out there for making games based on JavaScript. In fact, there are several game engines out there that support JavaScript as the scripting engine you would use to build games in that platform. You can build things as simple or as advanced as you like. It's pretty widely known that, yes, you can use JavaScript to make games. However, you can also use ColdFusion to make games. There's a real simple one baked into CommandBox. You can actually type box space snake, and it will give you a vintage ASCII-style snake game. If you're old like me and remember playing games on the Apple II computers, Snake might look very familiar. There was a great presentation at the government summit last year given by Min Vo. He gave a talk where he built a video game using React and ColdFusion. So you can combine your JavaScript stuff with your ColdFusion stuff to build games and use the CFML space to turn different features on and off, save information to the cloud, and that sort of thing. I think Min has more info available at his website, draftstudios.com. And there's also another great presenter that is pretty often seen at the ColdFusion conferences, Giancarlo Gomez. He gives a really good talk on using WebSockets, which at first you might not think, oh, that has anything to do with games. He's actually built a Simon Says style game using ColdFusion WebSockets on the back end and a little bit of JavaScript on the front end. So you can power all of that through ColdFusion. You can collect all of that together into one project, and then people could type box install my video game and download whatever your video game is from ForgeBox. So yes, you can use both JavaScript and ColdFusion for video game development.
Now, you mentioned earlier that both Node and CommandBox are open source. What if you want to contribute new features?
Contributing features, you can do that. They are both open source. This is where things are a little bit different, I think, than what people might expect. On the Node side, so it runs your JavaScript stuff on your laptop or your server or whatever. But the main engine of Node is written in C++. So you can contribute back to it, but in addition to knowing JavaScript, you have to know C++. And for the listeners that are not familiar with that, that language has a couple of learning curves in it that might be blockers for people that are not familiar with it. You have to do your own memory management in C++. You have to worry about things called pointers. There are a couple of concepts that are just kind of new to people if they're only familiar with JavaScript and languages like that. It can be done. You can also write add-ons for Node in JavaScript, but the core itself is written in C++. So it
sounds easier to contribute to CommandBox then.
Perhaps a little bit easier, yeah. On the CommandBox side, 90% of the core engine of CommandBox is written in CFML, and the remaining 10% is written in Java. I don't think every ColdFusion developer knows Java, but a noticeable chunk of them do. So contributing to the core CFML is pretty easy. And the nice thing about running CommandBox is when you install CommandBox on your laptop, it actually gives you all of the source code. And as you'll see, 90% of which is CFML. So you don't have to do any extra step to go track down that code.
All right. Well, sounds like score is 12-all right now.
Sounds about right.
So which one should you use?
I use both, to be honest. They serve different purposes. I'll have Node installed to do my JavaScript end of things. Just honestly, the way modern web development is going, people are using more JavaScript on the front end now than they did, say, 10 years ago. The browsers can do more than they used to be able to. The languages have more available in them. Modern JavaScript just does a lot more than it did in 2005. So there's a lot of stuff that it just makes sense architecturally to push it out to the client side. Let your browser do a lot of the heavy lifting when you can. And then on the server side, I'll use ColdFusion to build my API layer, save all the data to a database, make it an API connection point that I can power not just my Angular app, but my React app and maybe a mobile app of some sort, and have the ColdFusion layer talk to maybe other servers out in the cloud and pass data back and forth, or do whatever I needed to do that way. So yeah, I actually have Node and CommandBox installed, and I use them both pretty regularly. I'd say lately I've been turning CommandBox on more, but that's probably more specific to just the type of project I'm doing this month, whereas 3 months ago, I was working on something that was a little bit more 50-50, and I would turn on CommandBox and turn on Node and flip between the two windows as I needed.
But many developers could just pick one and go with it. You don't have to load both, right?
You don't have to, no. If you're writing a lot of what we call traditional ColdFusion apps, where it's like a top-down .cfm file and that sort of thing, if you're stuck in like a legacy style ColdFusion app, install CommandBox. And it's really useful in that space for doing things like testing your code against different types of ColdFusion. Say you're on a little bit of an older server, maybe ColdFusion 11, and your boss finally approved budget to update the code to ColdFusion 2018. You don't have to go through the manual steps of turning off your CF11 server, downloading the 2018 installer, clicking the 50 different screens in the installer to set it all up, only to realize, oh man, there's a bug in that I have to turn off the 2018 server and turn back on 11 so I can fix my code and make sure that it works on the 2018 machine. With CommandBox, it's really easy to flip between versions of ColdFusion. You type box server start to turn on the default server. And if I want to pick a specific one, I type box server start CF engine equals Adobe at 2018. You wait a few seconds for the jar file to be downloaded, and poof, my laptop is now running ColdFusion 2018. Let's say partway into that project, I realize my code has a bug and it's not quite compatible with 2018 yet, and I want to flip back to CF11, box server start, CF engine equals Adobe at 11, and it will just magically switch you to ColdFusion 11. And it really is that simple. You don't have to install anything separate. You don't have to click in the installers for version 11 or 2016 or 18 or anything else. It just, CommandBox will download the jar file and set it up for you in seconds. It's great.
So for people who want to learn this, I know you provide training in CommandBox and Node and all these exciting things. There's also a bunch of other learning resources. I'll put them in the show notes. There's a book on CommandBox that Altis has online. And of course, Brad Wood's blog is another great place. So just as we wrap up, you're going to be at CF Summit in Las Vegas. What are you looking forward to there?
I always look forward to the summit to see the quantity of ColdFusion developers that are there. That conference tends to grow in attendance every year, which I like to see. I like to see more and more people building ColdFusion stuff and showing up at the conference to get excited about everything. I also like talking with the other folks from the ColdFusion space that are vocal and doing the best they can to support it, such as you and the Ortus folks. And I'll probably see some of the guys from Blue River there. And I like
Can't you see them down the road? I thought they were in.
I can. It's weird. They are like 2 exits up the freeway from me, but we most often see each other at conferences. Not often here in town. Everyone's so busy working on things. I don't get a chance to go down there and say hi to them unless we're splitting a project together, which we do sometimes.
Well, I'll put the link for CF Summit in the show notes on the TerraTech site. But it's only $99 to attend. That's the early bird price to go to it. It's in October, and it is 2 days packed full of ColdFusion info and really intelligent people who are in the ColdFusion world. So if you do anything in ColdFusion, get there and check it out. It's amazing. I'll be there. We'll have a new book on ColdFusion out at the summit. So hit me up if you see that, and say hello to Nolan if you see him there. And it's also a great way. All the Adobe engineers from the ColdFusion department in India fly all the way to Las Vegas. So if you're having a tech issue with ColdFusion or you have a new feature you wished it had, this is your opportunity to just grab them either over a beer or a coffee and just make the case for whatever it is that needs doing, and a very effective way to get stuff to happen. So anyway, if people want to find you online, what's the best way for folks to do that?
They can find me at my website, southofshasta.com. They can also find me on Twitter at southofshasta. And yeah, those are probably the best ways.
Excellent. Well, we'll put those links together with your other links for GitHub and LinkedIn and what have you into the show notes. And thanks so much for coming on the show, Nolan.
Thanks for having me.